It's almost as if you have a superpower by learning to be by yourself. It's I mentioned social media, and I mentioned how people have changed. But some people, maybe they miss the 90s because people hung out more, right? But the funny thing is that people that hung out in the 90s and people who are addicted to social media, they actually have this one thing in common. They both are not able to be alone. It's funny that most people did not think about this before, and I think I'm probably the uh, the first and the only person that I know of that thought about something like this. You see, in the 90s, there were a lot of these rave or hip hop or block parties or whatever you call them, or clubs. And people, I know that people still go to clubs, but there'd be a lot of these house parties. And most of the time, I found um, that people who have these house parties and so on, they 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 put the music on loud, they smoke, they drink, or whatever it is, and they dance all night. Which it's not. There's nothing wrong with dancing. But the problem is that I think in the 90s, people made social interactions, we could almost say, like the end all or the be all or the most important thing in their life, wanting to hyper socialize. Right? People wanted to hyper socialize in the 90s. Everybody wanted to hang out with each other all the time. Everybody wanted to skateboard and cycle, go to the club together. People hung out all the time, right? And in the 90s, if you were a person that wanted to be alone, you would really have a hard time, right? But now, look at it from this angle. Everybody has social media, right? So we don't have, you could say we almost don't have block parties anymore, because even if you try to organize a block party, nobody would come because they'd rather be on their cell phone, their smartphone, looking through the lens of social media. So they are still these are two types of unproductive things, right? So having parties and interacting all the time, you're not producing anything, right? And being addicted to social media also makes you unproductive. You're not producing anything. If you're addicted to social media, you're watching other people's content, right? And if you want to have block parties and stuff like how people used to be in the 90s and before, which I call hyper socializing, these are two examples of things where you're not really being productive. You just, they're both distractions. They're both the two types of distractions. So hyper socializing, that means hanging out with people all the time, and being addicted to social media, they're both unproductive. So I kind of feel that if you are able to, uh, I'm not trying to say that you must hate people. Of course not. I'm not telling you to be antisocial, right? I'm just trying to tell you that, number one, if you're a person who's nostalgic to the times before today, so I use the 90s as an example because that's the most recent time that people were hyper socializing. Um, or maybe we could even say the early 2000s. But since smartphones came out, and most of the people that grew up in the time where smartphones were prevalent, basically the people grew up with cell phones, they almost certainly do all of their interaction through a smartphone, and they probably don't even meet people or hang out with people in person without their smartphones being present, right? They don't have the ability to live in the present because there always is even if they do meet people in person, they'll feel the need to pop out their smartphone and take pictures or videos of what they're doing. So they're both the people that grew up in the 90s, like I said again, were hypersocial, and the people who grew up with smartphones are, I don't like to use the word antisocial, but I would say like more, I really don't know what's the word for it. I, you know, like virtual socializing or something like that. But they're both distractions because you can binge on being physically social with people, and you can also binge on watching, using social media apps. But the person that's living in this day and age, who can overcome the hyper socializing, at the same time can overcome the virtual socializing, right? Which some people call social media, which I don't even know why they even call it social media because it's not helping you to be social in any physical sense of the word. Anyway, I digress. If you can overcome these two things, if you can, number one, develop the ability to not seek out any type of physical interaction with people, and again, I emphasize, I'm not telling you to be antisocial or to hate people or any of the sort. Then, and so if you can do that, so if you can actually um, develop the ability to not necessarily need to be around people all the time, not have um, the addiction of wanting to hang out with people all the time, like people had in the 90s. And at the same time, if you can um, overcome the obsession with wanting to uh, interact through social media and so on, or spend long amount of hours watching things on social media, then those two things are the major, I would say, blockages that you've overcome um, on your path to progress.